All right, hello again. This is Jeff Scott from Jeff Teaches Programming. And what I have done here in the last video I was working on was I took the BMI console app and redid it so that it included the functions that are in the validation both in the validation library I created. So now both the BMI GUI version 5 and the BMI console version 5 use the same functions from the validation both C# library file. What I'd like to do in this lecture is I would like to use those same functions inside of our payroll program, which we haven't looked at for a while. So what I did, just so you know, was I came in and I grabbed everything. Basically, I made a copy of second iteration pay console. Right mouse clicked on it and did a copy, and then renamed it third iteration pay console. Then I went in and changed the name of the file here from second iteration pay console to third iteration pay console. Then I went in and changed where it said second iteration pay console here and here, and I changed them both to third iteration pay console. Finally, I came in, right mouse clicked on my solution, did add existing project, and brought in, I'm not going to bring it in again because I have it in already, the third iteration of the payroll console. So here it is. Finally, I came in here and changed this up front so it says third iteration, and finally, in this third iteration of our payroll console app, we will add the functions created earlier for the BMI app. These functions are in a C# class called validation library in a file called ValidateBoth.cs. You already know that. All right, so the first thing I'd like to try to do here, and hopefully I won't have any problems doing this, and that is to add a reference to our DLL file. So let's go in here, let's right mouse click on this, and choose Add Reference. It's still right there, validation.dll, and click OK. Now, hopefully that worked okay. If I check again, it should now be checked. I can just cancel out then. It is checked, so I can just cancel. Now, hopefully, I can come in here and say, use validation lib. All right, well, I'm sorry, not use, it's using. Good job, Jeff. Using validation lib. All right, so hopefully now we've got access to that. So what I want to do is go all the way down, and basically the functions that I'm going to be working with in here, just so you see these, are going to be these. The input valid hours worked, the input valid hourly rate, and the calculate gross pay. Let's move this down a line so you can see it. And that was hours worked and hourly rate. All right. Then next, so we'll look at all these in just a moment, okay? But then next, we have to do the same thing for piecework. And again, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to work on the input valid pieces made, input valid price per piece. And again, we'll move this down so you can see it. And finally, where we figure out the gross pay for a piece worker. All right. Then next, I'm going to go down and work on the commission worker. So we've got input valid commission percent, input valid commission sales, and we've got our calculate gross pay for our commission. And let's again move this in. We'll move this down. And then finally, we have to do it at just the one. And that is for our, come on, there you are, for our salary. All right, and the only one we have to worry about in here, don't worry about these, they're fine. All right, But what we want to worry about in here then is the input valid salary. And that's it. All right, let's take all this stuff, the is decimal, etc., that we've got in here, and let's just comment all of it out. Every bit of it we're going to comment out. All right. Now, we may get errors doing that, and it's okay if we do. All right, because what I want to do is I want to start making changes in these files or these functions rather, that I just mentioned to you. So let's start with input valid hours worked. I started making some changes before, and then I had ran into some problems. So please input hours worked between, etc. So we've got the while true. Let's do this. Let's just take everything that's currently in here in this while true, everything, and let's comment all of it out. So the whole thing now is commented out. So we've got just a while true in there. Now some of this I'm going to be able to use. We want you to be able to go and put in, between the minimum hours and the maximum hours. So I think we can put all that back in just a moment. All right, and I came in here and I started to do some stuff. So what I'm going to do is, rather than that, I'm just going to remove all this. And I'm just going to start this one from scratch. Maybe that's a waste, but I'm going to do it that way anyway. All right. So in here, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do like we had. I'm going to say I have a message. Whoops. Let's have a comment in here. Oops. And it'll say, this will hold any error message or messages. Okay, so string error message, and we'll initialize it to nothing because there aren't any errors yet. Then next, we're going to put a flag in here. And let's just say this string will hold any error messages. This flag will be true if there were no error messages, and false if there were error messages. So far, just so you know, it's not really any different from what we had before, and that's okay. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say bool. We'll call it, I think we called it before, is success. But what we're doing here, notice we're checking input valid hours worked. So let's call it is valid. How's that? Is valid, and we'll set it to true. We'll have it default to true. We're going to assume that what we put in there is true. You see that both of these have got the green squigglies underneath saying we've created two variables that we're not yet using. And that's why we're getting that. Okay? All right. Now, let's put in a write here. Oops. So a write statement that says, please enter, how about input? Input hours worked between, and we're running out of room here, plus there's not 3 E's in between. So we'll go down to the next line here. And we want it between min hours and max hours. Now, we could do it and just say min hours and max hours. That's kind of the way we've been doing it. So min hours and max hours, and it'll work just fine. But I do want to mention something, because this is kind of, for lack of better words, almost out of the works of JavaScript. And what I mean is this. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to open this up. I'm going to open up Notepad. And I want you to see what I just did, which was this. Yeah. So let's move this over. Okay, and it works just fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this. But I do want to show you that it is possible. I put this on 2 lines so you could see it on screen. But if I come down here, I could have also done it like this. So we could have brought this in here. Let me make it smaller so you'll be able to see all of it. All right, and I don't need this anymore, and I don't need this anymore. Now, as it is right now, it wouldn't work. But if I surround these with curly braces, and then at the end, add my double quote, that would work. All right, by putting those in curly braces, that's saying substitute the value of the variable min hours. So either one of those would work. All right, I just put it like this so you could see everything, because if I grab the other one, you're not going to be able to see it unless I make this very small. All right, so we've got that. And let's do a string in here. And we've called this our str, our string, equals readline. Again, you can see that right now, our string had the squigglies underneath it, but they're gone because we're using the readline. All right? So, what we're going to want to do in here is, rather than just input valid hours worked, actually that's an okay name because that's what it is. Let's see if we can combine everything into here. So this hourly rate and basically just about everything. Let's look at that. All right. So this is what we put in. Where are we? There's where we are so far. All right. So what I'm going to put in here then is I'm going to add a tuple to hold any errors, any error messages. We can call that whatever we want, but we'll just call it MSG, and the value of is valid. We'll just call that OK. Okay. So I'm going to say var, var. Here's our tuple, MSG, and OK. And that's going to be equal to validation both dot is there input. Oops, come on, Jeffrey. Dot is their input. All right. And what we want to pass to that is the actual input that we just put in, which is our string and hours worked. All right. And that's our str. So notice there's no errors in here. Everything's looking good. All right. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to call is there input. And what that's going to do is it's going to return any error message and whether or not it worked. OK will be true if we put in input. It'll be false if we did not. And if we did not, we're going to get an error message. If we did put an input, message will be empty. All right. So we want to come in here now and say add error message. Add message contents to error message. If there was input, all right, MSG will be the empty string. if there was no input, message will hold the associated error message. All right, so we can come in here and say error message plus equal OK. And that'll concatenate onto error message whatever was returned here. All right, then we will compare. Let's say compare, not the greatest word, but that's the one I'm going to use here. Compare is valid with the current value of is valid. So I'm going to say here is valid. Now I could say is valid equal is valid and OK. That would work just fine. There's no error there. But there is a shortcut for doing that. And that is to say ampersand equal OK. Okay, so that's what we've done so far. So we came in here and we made a call from our library to is there input, and you can see what we passed in. All right, if there was an error message, okay, we'll have it in there and we'll add it to error message. If there was no error message, we'll just add the empty string to error message. And then we'll compare what was in our is valid Boolean flag with OK, which again return either true or false. All right, so that's our first one. Okay. Now, what else do we have to do in here? Well, one thing we do have to do, we have basically two other things we have to do. We know now there's a value in there. If we get down to here, or at least we're hoping there's a value in there. So the other things we have to check is that value a decimal? Because this is a decimal value. Ours can have, it's a double, all right, or a decimal. If we made this a double, we're going to have to change it to a decimal. It is a decimal. Good. All right. So we're going to have to check that next. So let's keep going in here. And then I'm again going to say, now we've already got this message OK, so we're not going to recreate it, because if we say var message OK again, we're going to get an error message. So this will also call the is there input function from the validation both.cs file of the validation library. All right, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to grab all those contents. Okay, and now we're not going to call is there input. What we're going to call is decimal. So we're going to do the same type of thing in here. All right, so let me grab this. And we're going to change this from is there input to is decimal. All right, and it'll look the same way. And then afterwards, we can do the same type of thing that we just did. Okay, so now we've checked think about the possibilities. We left it empty. If we left it empty, all right, then this is going to fail. Our call to is there input, and the is decimal is also going to fail because it's empty. if we put a value in that was not a number, all right, then this will succeed, but this will fail. All right, so we've got one more thing to do here. All right, and that is we have to basically come in here and check. All right, now we only want to go on and check if there were no errors. All right, so if there were no errors to this point, all right, we can parse the value of our string into the decimal value hours. But if there was any error or errors to this point, we do not want to do any parsing. Okay, so how can we check that? Well, there's different ways, but probably the easiest is to say if not is valid, meaning we had an error. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to grab these comments, which are correct. I'm going to put them down here. You say, what are you doing? Well, again, if there was any errors at this point, we do not want to do any parsing. So if not is valid, we can write line the following errors were found. And we'll just put that on a new line. How about just so we can read it? We'll just say errors found. And we'll put that on a new line. In fact, let's put at the beginning, let's put this in a new line too. Just so we have some space in here. So errors found. And we actually have the error right here. So we can say, let's try this one here. So we'll say here, ERRMSG. And you'll notice no error. So here's where we actually used it in there. All right. So we can let you know what the errors were to this point. Then we're going to just continue. All right. So if there were no errors to this point, we can parse. So we can come in here and say decimal, or do we have hours in here already? I don't know. No. Hours equal decimal dot parse of hour string. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to check and see if the value that we put in was literally a valid value or not. So what are we doing so far? We've come in here and we did maybe I got ahead of myself. Again, I've got my bevy of notes here. So what we've done in here is we're inputting the valid hours worked, right? Okay, so we're coming in here and we're telling you to input something in between here and here. And then we're checking to see if there was input. All right, then we're checking to see if it was decimal. Finally, the last thing that we want to do in here after we parse is we want to check to make certain that it's within range. All right, so we've got that. And I think we're going to be able to do this, but let's try it anyway, just to be sure. All right, this is a little different than the way I coded it originally, but it just came to me that this would make more sense. So we're going to say validation both, and I'm going to say here, is within range. Now we're going to get an error. It's this, and it's this. The problem is we have to put the other two things in here, and that is min hours and max hours. All right, now, doesn't like something, so we'll fix that right now. It says cannot convert a decimal to an int. Then let's take a look. Min hours, max hours. Okay, here's the problem. Here's the problem. When we did our is within range, we did it before, and we did it for integer values. And now we're trying to do it with decimal values. Okay? Well, min hours, we can make that an integer because it is 0. So we can say here int, and you'll notice that error goes away. And max hours is 84. So we can say int here also, and that'll fix that. Now, when we do this, it's either going to say that everything was cool or it wasn't cool. All right, now these are our hours that we're working with right here. So again, I can come back here and do the same thing. All right, so let's come down here, let's hit enter, and we'll do the same thing. So now we've done everything that I can think of. All right, to come back in here, and hopefully at least this works. Now, for this is returning hours, and it's going to return what? It's going to return something. All right, so let's come down here to the bottom, and we will return hours. Now, I don't know if this is going to work, but I think it will. First of all, let's just make sure it even compiles. Giving me an error. This is invalid token. It's telling me, oh, it's all this junk that I commented out in here. Because when I commented all of it out, I think I left the curly brace in there. Okay. All right, now it's telling me success is signed a value that's never used. So is error message. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Those are just warnings. So for now, I won't worry about it. But I want to see if I broke anything. So we'll do 1 for our hourly worker. Please input the hours. We'll leave it blank. Error is found. Well, it doesn't like what I put in there. Okay. But it is telling us to do it again. Let's put in something out of range. Well, it took that, which isn't good. All right, so there's a problem. Okay, then we got to go back and we got to fix it. Let's fix that, see if we can get this part to work, and then we'll come. Well, actually, we didn't do anything yet with our hourly rate, so maybe that's the problem. So let's look at this. All right. So what we've got in here so far, what we've changed, and you can see I'm already at 30 minutes, so I'm not going to go too much longer in this video. So I'll do these and break them up accordingly. So I'm inputting the valid hours worked. All right. Well, between this and this, okay, let's do this. So let's add here plus. That'll at least make it a little easier to read. Okay. Now, it didn't like what I put in there with that error message. Don't know why it wouldn't like that, but it didn't. So that's fine. So I'm going to put in here, I'm going to put this in the other way. Plus the error message. All right, just like that. And I don't need this there. Let's see if it works now. Again, all I'm worried about right now is the hours worked. If I leave it blank, all right, hours found, false, false. Okay, it is returning. That's okay. So input it again. Negative 333. Okay, that one isn't working correctly, so we'll have to look at that one. I'll come back and start with that in the next lecture. See you then.